So ever since Wuthering Waves version 2.0 has actually released, it seems that there's been a big change in terms of people comparing the game to other games, and well, this has been a thing that has been happening ever since the start of Wuthering Waves. It's been constantly compared to a lot of the Hoyoverse games and also some other gacha games as well, which honestly I think is a good thing, and obviously it breeds a lot of competition between some of the companies, as you can actually take a look at what some companies do better than another, whether Wuthering Waves does something better than, a Hoyoverse game, or Hoyoverse does something better than a Gacha Games game. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day, as long as people are able to make those differences and the companies are able to change, it's honestly a really good thing to see. And more recently I actually stumbled upon this article talking about why Wuthering Waves players should go over to Zenless Zone Zero, and why Wuthering Waves players should try out Zenless Zone Zero in general. Now, I've played a little bit of Zenless Zone Zero, but I really wanted to give this a look, as it's actually done by a news source which is actually quite prevalent, and they go into a full kind of detail about some of the mechanics and stuff that Wuthering Waves players might enjoy over in Zenless Zone Zero, and we're going to be going through whether some of these are true and whether some of these actually will appeal to Wuthering Waves fans, or is it just some kind of article to kind of loosely make some connections to get some people to come over to a Hoyoverse game. And that's what we're going to find out in this video. So if you guys do enjoy this video, then don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and also go to Game Subs, use my code KAZA, get 10% off. Again, they've got a ton of really cool stuff over there, so I definitely recommend checking it out. And yeah, let's get back into the video. So this is the article. It says why Wuthering Waves fans should try Zenless Zone Zero. It's by Game Rant. Now, if you don't know, I've covered Game Rant a lot over here, and they're very popular, especially in the kind of video game news kind of area. And they say since launching almost a year ago, Wuthering Waves has captured the hearts of millions of players worldwide, most especially gacha fans. Set in the post-apocalyptic world of Solaris 3, Wuthering Waves follows the amnesiac protagonist Rover as they explore the new world and meet other characters known as resonators along the way. Players also have to form strong teams and master the combat system to fight against different monsters. They say Wuthering Waves' open world setting and some of its gameplay mechanics have been compared to Hoyoverse's Genshin Impact. However, both games have clear distinctions whenever it comes to combat and exploration, which again I think is very true. Obviously, Genshin Impact has a lot of differences whenever it comes to combat and the overall team system and how teams are all set up, and also the exploration as well. I feel like Wuthering Waves' exploration has been much better, especially with Rena Sita and all the flying. It makes it just so much more easier. I actually came back to Genshin Impact recently just to have a little look. Obviously, Veressa is coming out very soon as well, and oh my god, bro, the exploration and everything like that was, my god, it was not fun at all. And playing against some of the bosses was not fun at all, which made me realize how good Wuthering Waves have actually been doing it recently. And then they go on to say one title that Wuthering Waves fans should definitely try though is Hoyoverse's Zenless Zone Zero. Now, obviously they go down here saying Wuthering Waves and Zenless Zone Zero have very similar post-apocalyptic story beats. They say just like Wuthering Waves, Zenless Zone Zero is set in the futuristic and post-apocalyptic world, primarily focusing on the city of New Eridu. Its protagonists, the proxy siblings Belle and Wise, aka Phaethon, help agents and other people navigate the hollows and defeat powerful enemies. Hollows are essentially supernatural disasters with dimensions that swallow up a large part of the city and contain monsters called ethereals. They are also similar to the Wuthering Waves laments, which are connected to the disaster trends and the wave warm phenomena which are happening in the game's world. And to be honest, I never even clocked that. I never even clocked that the stories are quite similar. I do actually agree that in terms of the post-apocalyptic setting and the similarities between all the hollow stuff and the laments and everything like that, it's actually kind of similar. I didn't even recognize that, but again, yeah, that is actually very true. They say both Zenless Zone Zero and Wuthering Waves allows players to explore the disaster-ridden worlds, which again is kind of true. Zenless Zone Zero does have a lot of kind of limited exploration. You can't really explore that much. It's only a small kind of area, whereas Wuthering Waves is like fully open world. And they say to discover the truth behind the world's anomalies and ultimately to find ways to eradicate the anomalies and save humanity. In terms of gameplay, both games are action-adventure gacha titles where players have to farm to upgrade materials and optimal items to build powerful units. The exploration also provides opportunities to find treasure, to engage in side quests, and interact with interesting NPCs who expand the game's retrospective worlds, which again, yeah, very true. Obviously, the whole format that Wuthering Waves has at the moment has been heavily inspired by the whole Hoyoverse format, and also some other systems as well that we've seen in the Gacha sphere. Obviously with the whole relic stuff and the echoes, they're very similar, and the same can be said for Zenless Zone Zero as well. Obviously, both of them do follow these kind of similar styles in terms of gacha. Then they go on to say the role of Zenless Zone Zero's proxies compared to Wuthering Waves' Rover. They say the first clear difference between the two is that the former's protagonist, proxy, Belle or Wise, doesn't go into combat. Zenless Zone Zero has playable agents with different elements and fighting styles, and they're the ones that actually enter the hollows and fight ethereals. The proxy also enters hollows in the form of an Eus, a Bangbu that they remotely control to accompany agents and provide support in battle. They say meanwhile, Wuthering Waves' Rover is a playable multi-attribute resonator with alternate forms unlocked as players progress through the story, which is a bit more similar to Genshin Impact's Traveler and Honkai Star's Trailblazer in this respect. And honestly, I think it does work for either one. I feel like Zero did want to mix it up a little bit and didn't want to get their main character too involved too much, which again, I think is actually a really good move from them to kind of switch it up a bit. But also, Wuthering Waves have done a very good job at including, you know, Rover and actually making them good as well. Obviously, Spectral Rover is very good at the moment with Phoebe and everything like that, which again, obviously is very nice to see. And they say the similarities and differences between Zenless Zone Zero and Wuthering Waves. They say, as mentioned, Wuthering Waves has drawn comparisons to Genshin Impact because of its fantasy approach to combat. However, certain elements of Wuthering Waves combat mechanics clearly stand apart from the Hoyoverse titles, such as concerto effects, applying buffs to the next character that is swapped in, and Genshin Impact's approach is different, with elemental resonances that apply buffs to the entire party. Evasion and stunning are also important in Wuthering Waves, as they allow players to trigger additional powerful attacks against enemies, which yeah, is true. I think a lot of people that are comparing the combat between Genshin Impact and Wuthering Waves are a little bit silly, you know. Obviously, you can kind of compare some aspects of it, I guess, in terms of the animations and stuff like that, but apart from that, in terms of the actual setup, they are very, very different. And, you know, I even got a taste of that whenever I actually went back to the game the other day. You know, I was there trying to dodge the boss, pressing right click like I usually do for Wuthering Waves, but I can't, you know, that's not a thing in Genshin Impact. And it was very, very weird going back to the Genshin Impact combat when you're so used to playing Wuthering Waves combat. And honestly, it's a little bit nicer going back to Zenless Zone Zero and actually playing Zenless Zone Zero, just because of, you know, you can press, you know, evade and things like that. So it has very similar systems, which honestly is quite nice. They say Zenless Zone Zero is often likened to a fighting game because of its beat 'em up mechanics and team up features. Just like Wuthering Waves, dodging attacks at the right time allows agents to immediately deal dodge counters to enemies. What makes Zenless Zone Zero stand out is that the agents can actually get stat buffs when their allies have the same elements, fighting style, and come from the same faction, which again is very, very cool. And then finally say, although Zenless Zone Zero doesn't have the same fantasy approach as Wuthering Waves, the post-apocalyptic atmosphere brings a sense of familiarity. Plus, the more modern take on Zenless Zone Zero's characters and environment also makes it relatable to the real world in a way, which obviously, yeah, again, is great. I think that Zone Zero have actually done a very good job. I don't think it's going to be bigger than Genshin Impact or, you know, Honkai Star. No, obviously not. Zenless Zone Zero has, you know, done very good for themselves, but I don't think, you know, they're going to be the biggest game just due to the fact that they've limited themselves quite a lot. But honestly, after reading this article, I do think Wuthering Waves players should try out Zenless Zone Zero, and, you know, they should try out lots of other games as well. I'm not just saying Zenless Zone Zero in particular. You should be trying out a lot of gacha games, especially if you're interested in gacha games in general, because it can give you an overall broader sense of what is going on in the gacha sphere, what is good, what is bad, because many people are content with a 50-50 system in the kind of, you know, banners and everything like that, because they've only played mainly Hoyoverse games. But if you actually go outside, you can actually see that's not the case for some other games, and it gives you a little bit more of a perspective of what's going on. And even playing Zenless can actually help that if you just mainly play Wuthering Waves and everything like that. It can give you more of a broader perspective of each of the games, which I think is just like really great. Now, obviously, Zenless Zone Zero isn't for everyone though. I feel like, you know, I did struggle with it a little bit in terms of, you know, keeping up and just being interested, but honestly, I don't think it's too bad. Obviously, some people might be put off by the character designs as well and everything like that. I don't think they're too similar to the point where it's like kind of insane. I feel like, you know, there are many, many differences, and I think this article does kind of point out them and doesn't really point out a lot of the differences. I didn't see very many differences there, apart from some of the smaller ones, like, you know, the main character not being playable, but there are many other differences in terms of the game as well, like, for example, the style of the game, everything like that, in terms of character design, environment design, you know, the fact that one's open world, fully open world, which I thought was a little bit kind of, you know, they held it back from you a little bit, which I thought was a bit weird. But honestly, overall, I think that this is a pretty decent article talking about the differences and similarities between Wuthering Waves and whether Wuthering Waves players should actually try Zenless Zone Zero in general. But yeah, if you guys did enjoy this video, then don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and let me know down in the comments if you guys are going to be trying out Zenless Zone Zero, or if you've already tried out Zenless Zone Zero, and what did you think of it, you know? What did you think of Zenless Zone Zero as a Wuthering Waves player? Because again, I'm very interested to know, I'm very interested to see, you know, what you guys actually think of Zenless Zone Zero as a whole. And yeah, don't forget to go to GameSubs, use my code Kaza, and I'll see you guys in the next one. That's all. See ya.